Content farming is defined by good old Wikipedia as when a company that employs large numbers of freelance writers to generate a large amount of textual web content, which is specifically designed to satisfy algorithms for maximal retrieval by automated search engines, or SEO. A very technical way of just saying, for our purposes, it's a YouTube channel that begins operating like a company by outsourcing research, editing, and script writing in order to pump out a significant amount of content to achieve the largest amount of monthly revenue possible. Since video essays are one of the most popular forms of content here on the YouTube platform, it should be of no surprise to anyone that people take it upon themselves to farm this type of material. One of the most pervasive channels to do this is iilluminaughtii, ran by a woman named Blair. This channel specializes in exposing the misadventures of companies and other prolific figures. Or, as I like to say, reorganizing, reinterpreting, and repackaging the already existing investigative journalism painstakingly done by others, but hey, I won't knock their hustle. Over the years, iilluminaughtii has been involved in numerous discourses surrounding the alleged ill treatment of her employees, plagiarism, and just general meanness. Up until recently, these controversies have been kept relatively small and unremarkable, as only a few smaller channels have picked up the stories. However, that all changed back in April when Blair took to Twitter to confront beloved legal analysis channel Legal Eagle to accuse its editors of plagiarizing her very generic editing style. At first, it appeared that this would just be simply another small hiccup in iilluminauttii's online history, since Legal Eagle responded promptly and openly with evidence that showed to the contrary, leaving iilluminaughtii to retract her reactionary statement with a dutiful apology. But that was before some of iilluminaughtii's old colleagues and friends from defunct collaboration channel Sad Milk came forward with Twitter statements stating that this type of reactionary, intolerant behavior continues to be a pattern with Blair. Amongst these naysayers was theclick, a massive Reddit channel, wonderstruck guy, or hii'mwonder, who creates commentary content, and ozmedia, who is another Reddit channel. Each of these young men have made responses to iilluminaughtii's response to their Twitter postings, ozmedia's being embedded within Wonders. This type of dialogue is not normally in my wheelhouse, so why am I talking about it? Well, dear viewers, there was something profoundly different about this drama that I believe has been becoming a norm on the platform for quite some time, and will probably only continue to get worse. If you have been following this debacle, if nothing else, have you not noticed how exceedingly corporate it all is? For those of you who are unaware of the situation, let's break down all three of these videos really quick because you're gonna need to know the background for a topical discussion. iilluminaughtii posted her response to the allegations presented by her former friends on April 28th in a video appropriately titled iilluminaughtii Exposed. The primary points of contention with this video mirror that of the primary points presented within it. The accusations of Click facilitating a Discord environment that was harmful to minors, questioning the Click's integrity by stating he has or does use stigmatized language, her framing of Wonder as an unreliable narrator by weaponizing his mental health, and finally, people's discontent with her crying at the end of the video while reflecting on her past friendship with ozmedia. On May 2nd, the Click released a video, iilluminaughtii and Sad Milk, detailing not only iilluminaughtii's poor recollection of the failings of Sad Milk, but also debunking her attacks on his character.
The Click and I had shared Discord moderators around the time of Sad Milk being created. Due to the Click's inaction, our shared moderators had brought a situation in his server to my attention. In Click's Discord, there was a 19-year-old bragging about a 12-year-old that he was claiming to be involved with. A moderator reached out to get more information on this situation. This 19-year-old then reiterates, and I am directly quoting this here, "I talked with my therapist about it, even too, and he told me as long as I don't touch her, it's okay." Click and his team did not pursue any immediate action to ban, restrict, or report this individual. So those shared mods came to me, and they told me that they were uncomfortable.
He supplied, in my opinion, sufficient evidence that her claims on running his Discord in a dishonest or harmful way was only conjecture. He did this by providing receipts of his moderators banning the culprit in question and revealing additional details to iilluminaughtii's timeline, which originally made it seem as though the Click willfully ignored the inappropriate behavior for a considerable amount of time. In actuality, the click was asleep for the instance Illuminati referred to in her video, but as I said, his moderator still proceeded with the ban within a timely manner.
In the allegations against me, it is claimed that I didn't react or respond to the situation. Number 1, being asleep at 2 a.m. detail was completely left out. 2, the fact that he was actually banned before this whole thing was left out. And 3, a receipt of Illuminati reaching out to me to get me to respond wasn't shown in her video or allegations. And the reason for this is that it doesn't exist.
As for his use of stigmatized language, he stated the clips that she was possibly referencing were from over 10 years ago when he was a teenager first learning the English language, which is significant and relevant to me because 1, teenagers are out-of-pocket creatures who deserve to be given grace because they are still learning, and 2, I don't tend to hold non-Americans to the same standards of language usage as I do with people who are American or people within cultures that are very similar to America's. Simply because in most cases, it wouldn't make that much sense to do so unless the person showed that they actually have an understanding of the American optics of language, and if they had a primarily American audience. But even then, the situation would still require more nuance. Because do Americans have the end-all be-all say in how language is presented across the world? I think not.
Click using abhorrent language. Content warning, mention of slurs. I will be brief here because there isn't really much substance. She claims I was tossing around slurs when gaming with friends. The only evidence she has in a group chat where she's talking to Wadi, among a few others. So it isn't an actual receipt of anything I did or said. It's not even a conversation I'm in, but just a few anonymous names venting in a group chat. And to add an extra layer of transparency on my own behalf, I didn't actually know the R word could be considered derogatory up until maybe 2020. So it's possible I said it before that point, but I don't recall specifics. When people came to me around this time and told me they had had a word used against them simply for being neurodivergent, I was surprised, as that had not been the case around me when I grew up.
However, the most damning thing towards Illuminati from the click's response was his accusation of Blair creating at least one alt or burner account to maliciously spread rumors about himself and the rest of the Sagmilk gang that fell out with her. With the assistance of former workers of Illuminati, the click was able to show that Blair has actually paid people to dig up dirt on him. He was also able to present a screenshot of Blair's drafting of a post that would later be seen on Reddit under an alt account.
So based on what I have seen, she, along with some staff and others, would sit in this chat and just hype up each other's hatred for us, grasping at straws. And if this wasn't enough, here's a former staff member of hers getting paid to sift through raw audio recordings of me looking for dirt, more specifically the R word. I needed to work with this person to help me find Click saying the R slur in Sadmilk's raw audio. I can do that, just let me grab a shower and I'll be down. She claims he said it in a Sadmilk video, but can't remember which one, and she's over her head. I'll pay you $200 to find it, and here's the payment. She actually paid people to dig up dirt and run smear campaigns on ex-colleagues. What has me a bit surprised is the next few screenshots. Here is Illuminati having a conversation with the same admin, sharing the same kind of, dirt digging old videos that we've seen previously in this video. And she says, 16 seconds, the alt account is gonna love this. In the next screenshot, you can see her writing out a draft. I saw in the Sadmilk announcement of all the milkmen. Now I'm seeing the comments. We all agree it's obviously not on good terms. Blair tweeting about being stabbed in the back, etc., etc. This draft matches with one of the posts made by an alt account called Doobie Schmertz on Reddit. This is actually Blair on an alt account making the claims that Blair must have seen some of his old videos randomly. She totally wasn't paying people to dig up dirt. This is her on an alt account spreading misinformation and trying to enhance her own image.
That's wild and juvenile, if not a bit obsessive. Wonder's video response was released on May 11th, and he added additional context to Blair's claims of him being a deadbeat employee who used her for money and lodging. The Illuminati stated that she, out of the pure kindness of her heart, provided Wonder with employment as a video editor, housing, and a brand new car that was worth up to $40,000. And all Wonder did to repay her unwavering kindness, in her perspective, was allow his dog to make a mess of her home, miss important editing deadlines, destroying the overly expensive cars she brought for him, and overall just being a bad employee and a poor tenant. Wonder refuted every single point, some with evidence and some with more anecdotal revelations, but that's to be expected with interpersonal dynamics. In his very short time of being employed by Blair, he points out that he was not given given any work aside from one project that was due after his termination date, directly contradicting Blair's claim that he could have produced at least 3 videos during his time. He goes on to say that Blair's company did not provide him with any pre-notice that he was not meeting work expectations or conforming to company behavioral policies before terminating him. He also accounts for Blair's assessment of his desire to essentially just be a moocher. Tragically, Wonder details his mental health journey, including trauma-induced OCD that stems from a terrible childhood experience, that was initially brought into question by iilluminaughtii in the hopes of helping people understand why the reliance on one person, Blair, was so detrimental to especially him. And keep in mind, even removed from Wonder's trauma, Blair acting as one person's employer, landlord, car loan holder, and friend was an unhealthy, unbalanced situation that's just gonna get worse as we move along.
I know this is scripted, but I really want to reiterate here that I felt small. I felt defeated. I had literally left my apartment for this. I lost my independence for this. My belongings, either tech-related or just memorabilia, were and are still gone to this day. I didn't want to upload because I knew every time I did, I knew Blair was probably checking my social blade, laughing at me, as I had seen her do to every single former Sad Milk member for months. I had no way to prove to my friends why I had seemingly high hopes for the future, and in the course of a summer, I had almost no money to my name due to Blair's butterfly effect.
This is the point where I really started to narrow in on some of the telltale signs of the iilluminaughtii's response, mind you, but more on that in just a second. Throughout his video, Wonder had ozmedia, who was previously the closest person to iilluminaughtii out of this bunch, corroborate some of his clarifications, such as the house they all shared at one point in time being in shambles because of Blair, as Wonder originally claimed, but Blair of course refuted. Between Wonder and theclick's response videos, there has been a consensus that many people had already come to before these 2 response videos, honestly, that the iilluminaughtii is a bad person who responds horribly to criticism. Not to be heartless, but I was so confused as to why this drama has had such a stronghold in the commentary space, particularly a very niche space for faceless channels. In many ways, it reminds me of the Creepshow art issue that happened a year or so ago, aside from the portions dealing with the alleged stalking of Emily Artful, of course. But not only was a majority of this beef very personal and could have potentially been chopped up to sometimes friends fight and become very toxic, except for when the more serious accusations arose. But it was also very focused on business and legal transactions amongst all of these parties. Theclick's initial tweet thread was posted in his own words as a way to ensure that people understood that his brand was separate from the iilluminaughtii's, since she kept getting into controversies. He didn't want her bad press to affect his entity. Theclick spoke of properly moderating his Discord server, how he and his team work hard to maintain a family-friendly and positive environment. He talked about his network and how his channel was actually reestablished after its undue banning by YouTube, since Blair claimed some stake in reversing that action. He provided documentation of his exit letter from Sad Milk and detailed how respectful it was to everyone involved. All of these talking points were very necessary in his response to Blair's accusations, but much like Blair's initial statement, it felt detached, distant, and like I was hearing a business's official release in light of a controversy. And this feeling did not arise because their videos were scripted. I always find it very funny when people preemptively defend as to why their apologies or responses are scripted. It's probably just a response to the rampant criticism levied by video essayists and commentators. But as far as I'm concerned, if it's your own words based on your authentic feelings, scripting does not faze me. Word choice is very important in any video, but especially one that is featuring an apology or an explanation. And it is not strange to convey the same emotions while reading your script on camera that you felt while writing it. That's why I don't follow any of Wonder's emotional displays. And for iilluminaughtii in particular to state that she was scripted was especially laughable because we can't even see your face, hon. Why would we ever assume that you're not scripted? Speaking of word choice though, in Blair's video, especially during the section regarding Wonder, she used very specific language that made my attorney in training ears kind of perk up immediately. When discussing the transaction between ozmedia, Wonder, and herself regarding the car purchase for Wonder, she deliberately specified the numbers down to the very cent.
Now, let's move on to the legalities that Wonder brought up in regards to how he claims that he ended up with no car, barely any clothing, no money, and no home. Which leads me to one of the stupidest mistakes of my life. After repeatedly hearing Wonder say how desperately he needed a car, and after believing what he said about how miserable he was, I decided to try and help my friend in a way that I now realize was pretty idiotic. I look back at this decision with regret and embarrassment. Ozmedia and I collectively decided to take out a loan together in the amount of $42,359.69. Additionally, I brought $28,346.79 in cash as a deposit. Wonder did not contribute to the deposit on the car. With this rent-to-own contract, I agreed to only charge Wonder the cost of the loan and not the full value of the car itself, meaning within a 24-month period, he would have only paid $14,120.12 for a car that, when purchased, went for a grand total of $61,386.23.
It's a tactic commonly used to distract listeners from the point that is actually being made, because the average listener's mind turns to trying to visualize the numbers being presented, so they kind of miss the actual argument. It's also a method to add more validity to the argument being presented, as in to say, oh my god, she has everything down to the exact dime, so she must be right. That is not to say whether or not her argument had any true merit. It was just a strange rhetorical or argumentative device to employ in that moment. But because the response is indeed scripted, it leads me to believe that it was on purpose. Additionally, when she detailed Wonder's mental health crisis and releases what could have very well been a possible letter if things had gone differently, she stated that she did so because the context was needed, but I'm not so sure that was truly the case.
After the car was back in my possession on the 29th of July, Oz and I received numerous messages from Wonder, which will be available in the Google Drive. What I specifically would like to highlight is that he insinuates that he had intention to and was taking action to arm himself to end his life.
Her audience would have understood very well had she just said, Wonder was struggling with his mental health, so I recommended my previous therapist that I found to be very helpful in the past. The whole disagreement surrounding this therapist is that, according to Wonder, Blair insinuated that he stole the therapist from her, while Blair claims that she didn't know that essentially sharing a therapist would cause a conflict of interest for said therapist, considering many of Wonder's concerns seem to have been revolving around Blair at the time. There was truly no reason Blair had to include the detailed information regarding Wonder's ideations at the time. At least no reasoning that an average person with no malicious intentions could conceive. But if you're thinking in the terms of how can I win this battle, the intentions behind this type of action could be one of two things: to get back at Wonder for exposing her mental health breakdown and living conditions that embarrassed her, or to discredit Wonder by presenting him as an unstable person with unresolved trauma. The latter portion is commonly used in cases surrounding accusations of and present the victim as unstable and unreliable and watch their testimony fall apart before the juror's eyes. It was a blatant personal attack that I was surprised to see someone in the anti-capitalism video essays hemisphere do. But as I consider iilluminauttii's video more and more, the less surprised I was, because I honestly don't view her channel as a person running a YouTube channel. And I don't think she does either. What typically draws people to video essay channels is, yes, the information itself, but also how the information is presented and typically the person presenting it. What makes a video essay truly great, in my opinion, is when you can clearly see the creator's own ideas and points intertwined throughout the essay and forming a solid argument through personal interpretations of facts and evidence. iilluminauttii's channel tends to lack that personal touch. She hires others to write her scripts and do her research, which I would say I can kind of understand given the size of her channel, but the likes of Shan Spear or Tiffany Ferg and so on and so forth also have massive channels and are still able to embed personal touches in their videos. It could just come down to a stylistic choice, but it still aids in the detachment people will inevitably feel towards iilluminauttii. She is an entity, not a person. This interpersonal beef between creators snapped me back into the reality that she is indeed a person though, but she really didn't respond like one. What person, a person with a whole platform and a clear knack for marketing, sits down and details someone else's mental health crisis? What person is sure to highlight how amazing their company's employee benefits are, even when it had nothing to do with the accusations being dispelled? What person slyly picks their wording so intentional to covertly accuse someone of facilitating an environment to thrive in, rather than just stating that she thought that the click did a bad job of moderating his own Discord server? What person willfully employs very specific styles of arguing that are meant to distract when defending themselves? These are aspects that we see in law where people have clear, decisive motives and end goals. We see these aspects repeated in corporations, businesses, things that are removed from humanity. While the Click's video was not manipulative in how I believe the iilluminauti's video was, he donned the same business professional persona that I think was just meant to stay on point and on track, but the most impactful clip, one that he actually added while editing, was when this persona was dropped. This is the clip where he exposed Illuminaughti's alt accounts. The information presented was shameful to Blair, yes, but it was his disbelief and genuine reaction to discovering it that really enabled his audience to see how deeply this entire situation had impacted him. I think that was the part that really made this into something more than just a beef between friends, or even a betrayal between friends. The situation was now clearly painting a picture of a vindictive person who sought to undermine and destroy someone else's career. But the only person in this entire situation who came forward to date that has solely relied on his humanity is Wonder. He was open and, as far as I can see, honest. Breaking down the walls of strength and shirking the required I don't give a fuck attitude in a receipts video a la James Charles worked very well to his benefit. Blair tries to rely on her humanity at the end of her piece where she addresses ozmedia, whom she said helped her through a large number of life changes through the course of their friendship. However, people felt like this was a manipulation on her part.
This final section and this final person will be the hardest for me to address, so I plan on keeping this brief. Oz, you were right. I am afraid of looking stupid and weak online, and yet I am those things right now. You've been with me through a lot of really intense and personal situations in my life. I just want to say thank you for always being my support through all of my ups and downs. I know that a lot of these personal situations in my life left me very thin and sometimes irritable, and I want to say thank you for supporting me through it and talking me through some really hard times.
So what makes her emotional response different from the Click's or from Wonder's? After all, we didn't have the latter two videos until a later date, so it wasn't like that many people were really sympathizing with the Click or Wonder at the time. People were already questioning this kind of response from Illuminaughtii prior to these videos' release. I believe the difference was her audacity. Her audacity to weep for herself after exposing what really could have certainly been one of her former friends' darkest days. Her audacity to cry after attempting to weaponize one of the most powerful accusations against the Click with flimsy evidence. Alongside that, throughout her response, she continuously used ozmedia as a point of validation to some of her stories against the Click and Wonder. So to call him out at the end of the video and permanently sever their friendship was strange and a bit uncomfortable to see. Ozmedia's involvement in this entire discourse has been very peculiar to me as well. All three parties have used him as a point of reference for their anecdotal evidence, and he is very vocally on the side of not Blair. To my knowledge, he and Blair lived together the longest and were the closest a couple of years ago. And throughout the course of their friendship, which appears to have ended this past January, Oz helped and supported Blair in some of her bad behaviors and smear campaigns. It was not until very recently that he ended his friendship with her and attempted to make amends with the other former members of the Sad Milk channel. I will be 100% transparent and say that he is not a reliable source of information for me. And that is because I don't feel like he has been very forthcoming with any details regarding his relationship with Blair, which makes me question what happened to their friendship, what the apex of it was, and why he left her side and went to the sides of the Click and Wonder. Motives do matter in establishing someone's credibility. In Wonder's video, he states that he does not hold anything against Oz, and the Click echoed the same sentiment. But Wonder went on to say that Oz was in a relationship with Illuminaughtii.
Over the last few months, Oz has made countless efforts to prove not only to me, but to every other former Sad Milk member that he truly was sorry for the role he played in anything that took place. It shows a tremendous amount of strength, and Oz will always have my respect as a person for what he has done. I don't blame him for his role. He was in an abusive situation and had every reason to fear Blair. I feared her too for a very long time.
And that is what gives me a bit more pause here. Now, I don't believe that Oz has ever used that particular word to describe his experiences with Blair, but if that's the case, maybe That's why Oz doesn't come forward with his experiences. Maybe because they're too new, too personal, too raw to share. He has plainly stated that he doesn't want to share details, so we could just leave it at that. But it will still mark him as unreliable, or at least very questionable in my book, because I don't have all the information I think is necessary to formulate a solid opinion on him, especially since I have no context of his history online or his content. I am not the type of person to assume that a person is brave for essentially moving from one side to another after one friendship has ended. Disregarding Wonder's speculations of between Oz and Illuminaughtii, if Oz was willing to participate in smear campaigns against others of Sagmelt solely because of Blair's word, I can't help but question his integrity in general when this current situation can be very much in the same pattern. Regardless, it still means something to admit your wrongdoings and come forward to an audience of literal hundreds of thousands of people while going against a massive creator like Illuminaughtii. I'm just overly critical of people's unstated intentions. Using a third person who may or may not actually be on your side to corroborate your story seems to be a new tactic in the creator space as of late. In the Kwite situation where the creator was accused of SA by a former friend, the accuser relied on the word of mouth backing of a couple of other shared friends as well. My question has always been, what do these third parties bring to the table, and why should we trust their word? That was the purpose of my questioning Oz's intentions, not because I think he's a despicable person. We all know who the despicable person in this situation is. Just because someone is there to corroborate a story or an action does not mean that the initial accuser was honest, accurate, or correct. Multiple testimonies mean nothing to me when it comes to content creators, influencers, celebrities, or anyone of any significant influence, unless there is some type of concrete evidence to support their story, even if it is somewhat speculative. This is because the promise of power, influence, and money will always persuade and drive people to do undesirable things. In this situation in particular, I would have believed Wonder and the click's tales regardless of Oz's involvement. Of course, between the three creators' tales, the truth is somewhere in the middle, but there's more so an element of truth that I see with the two young men. Nevertheless, between involving third parties and the exceedingly corporate manner of response from creators in divisive situations, it's increasingly becoming more of a common space. And I honestly don't blame them to some extent because people can be absolutely insatiable online. I can understand how it can be easier to address things, certain things that I actually would say should not be publicly addressed online. I understand how addressing those things is easier if you do it in the most detached way possible. I've been in situations in real life, not online, which I would argue is a bit worse at times, where I've been attacked from all sides for standing my ground. And if you actually have a soul, unlike me, it can feel very isolating. It's concerning that this is the new direction that creators are being pushed into, to respond to human interactions in a non-human manner, that is. On the other hand, you have channels like Illuminaughtii that seem to have almost intentionally dehumanized themselves for the sake of the appearance of aloof intelligence. Then you have responses like Kwite's, where he felt it was necessary to detail exceedingly intimate parts of his life in order to clear his name. And to remain on point and concise, he did so in a detached way that almost gave me a feeling of dissociative properties. We, as audience members, sometimes demand too much of people with large platforms. Kwite was accused of such a heinous action, and people condemned him immediately for it. And I'm not going to pretend like I don't know why they did. No one wants to be caught supporting an accused R-worder. But this thing of believe all victims has been misconstrued far too long online. From my perspective, the phrase was popularized because of the disproportionate amount of scrutiny victims of sexually motivated crimes experience. They did not and do not receive the same kind of courtesy and benefit of the doubt that victims of other crimes may receive. This is something that is not unique to women either. Men are also victimized under this same scrutiny. This phrase was to remind people of this reality and to remind us to push aside our biases and harsh speculations in favor of first listening to the survivor's testimony. Rather than coming in with first the question of, why did you do blank? The phrase aimed to encourage us to lead with, are you okay? Do you need aid? How can I support you? However, it seems at times this phrase has taken on a different meaning than what I originally interpreted as. And that's kind of the awesome but simultaneously frustrating thing about the internet. Phrases and words can take on vastly different meanings depending on where you look. It seems to me that some have taken this saying and somehow weaponized it in order to justify the intense bullying, harassment, or levying unwavering accusations towards the accused. People sometimes jump the gun with the rapid condemning of someone and have been wrong several times. Supporting victims and survivors does not have to equal literally destroying someone else's life before substantial evidence has been brought forward. It's a hard truth to sit in that we don't know everything about a horrific event simply because one person posted something about it on Twitter. And we probably will never know everything. Because of all this, I think we need to revise the phrase into something that is less ambiguous. Maybe something along the lines of, approach all victim testimonies with respect and the assumption of truth, without condemning the person of accused until evidence proves their guilt. But that isn't as pretty or idealistic, is it? Kwite should have been given the time to process the accusations levied against him. Instead, he was berated for not responding quick enough. And then he pumped out a video with a Google Drive attached exposing all of his personal interactions with the accuser. I cannot imagine how world-shattering receiving an accusation of that magnitude could be. This same logic applies to everyone, honestly. We've made way too many mistakes by throwing the monkey wrench at people who turned out to be innocent in the face of allegations from faceless individuals half the time that were unsubstantiated or were motivated by malice or shown to be fabricated. We don't have to come to quick conclusions or be so harsh and militant about certain things that literally have nothing to do with us. We are just here for the ride half the time. These people owe us, the audience, absolutely nothing. Not a video, not a response, nothing. Most of them do it anyways though, because I'm sure they would prefer to keep the platforms they work so hard to build, but they don't have to. This is not a court of law. The purpose of my saying this is not to encourage people to remove responsibility from whatever party is involved in a situation. It's to make people recognize that the very reason we love content on YouTube is going to fade away if we keep holding these people to impossible standards that most of us actually don't even uphold in our everyday lives. Each time we immediately bandwagon or dogpile an influencer or creator for something that we know almost absolutely nothing about, each time we critique an apology down to their very shifts in body language and eye movements, each time we raise the bar higher in the sky for these people, the more we will see that personal touch in videos disappear. It's about finding a balance between very necessary, very valid criticism and giving someone room and grace. After all, how can we expect creators to remain human when we don't treat them like it? There's a lot more that I can and will eventually say about the topic of allegations online that revolve around SA or R, and also the impact of the Me Too movement as well. But I will save that for another day, another video. So until next time, guys, bye.